Because one of the things that when I look back through your post, there was one towards the end where you'd photographed all 30, and your caption said something about like the limitations of working with one structure, and you described it as the scaffolding that you can like use to build ideas, and I really like that phrase.
It's a metaphor I use often, actually, because I think when you're working in series and when you're working with constraints, people often think that's really limiting. People are like, oh no, I want my creativity to be free and expansive, and it's like, actually you don't, because then you have too many options. And if you work with a structure, then it does provide that framework that you're working in with. You know, there were a lot of wonderful, wonderful pieces that came out of that challenge last year. But I think with a challenge, it's really easy to get overwhelmed. And if you set yourself, if you start with a structure, if you go, I'm going to work with an A4 piece of paper, or I'm going to work with a matchbox, or I'm going to work with an envelope structure, or whatever the structure is, then you always know you've got that. It's like a touchstone, you know?
Also, I think for matchboxes specifically, you have a structure, you have a container, but within that, you could go much bigger if you wanted to.
Oh yeah,
which you have done. Pieces that opened up, and so you
could here, like, so this one says, who needs shoes when you know how to fly? And this was the dance one.
Oh, I love this. This is the fabric, isn't it?
And this is the fabric. So this was one of the techniques from your book, which is printing on fabric. This is silk. And oh, she's upside down. So she opens right out, and it's a print of a ballerina with her skirt sort of flying everywhere. And so it scrunchies back into its little matchbox. So I played a lot with where the photograph went on the matchbox, whether it went on the inside or the outside, how big it was. And there were others. It was so intense to do as well, because I did all of them. And I started out, I think I said to you on the first one, I wasn't going to do this. Because I thought, when I looked at it, was that funny thing that you get with creativity, that sometimes it's a bit scratchy. Do you know what I mean? Like, I always think what's interesting with creating stuff and having an art practice is that you actually make things that annoy you slightly. Because there's that thing often, if something's easy, you don't actually want to do it. And why I did the project was because your prompts really, I don't want to say irritated because that's wrong, but they were so specific that I kept looking at them, and I kept seeing them going past on Instagram, and I was like, I'm really interested in that, but I don't know where I would start because these are so specific.
Yeah, they were unusual, weren't they?
Yeah, because usually when you get a challenge on Instagram, they're just like one word, whereas yours were these little poems, and I was like, I don't even know what to do with this. I can't see any way into this. And then I did this first one on the first night, and I actually did it really late, like last thing at night, and I was like, it suddenly came, and I was like, oh, the matchboxes. And I suddenly knew what I was doing. And what got me into it actually was when I realized I didn't have to replicate your prompt. I could sort of bounce off it.
Yes.
And that was a thing I did all through the challenge. So all of my matchboxes have text on or in them. Yeah. And all the text is a direct response to your text. So it's not and I saw people who, used your text in their pieces, which was very effective. But I really didn't want to do that. I didn't want to use other people's words. I was like, I have to use my own words. And so I used your words almost as a springboard. So I remember you saying, Jane, that I think it was you that said that, oh, yours are always a bit like kind of off kilter. Like they've kind of gone off at a right angle from where we started. And that's because I was doing that. I was using the prompts as a sort of springboard into my own words.
But, and I think this challenge was supposed to be about storytelling. And so I think, you could take just one element or just a glimpse from what we said. You could take the whole thing, or you could use it as a starting point to tell your story. So
it was so interesting seeing how people interpreted it, wasn't it? I'm really looking forward to the next one and seeing everybody's creativity flowering again.
No, I think the starting point when Jack and I came up with the challenge was that we're passionate about using old photos and telling people's stories, these forgotten people whose stories we want to tell. And that's what we do through our art. And we really wanted to find a way of helping other people to see old photos as a means of telling stories. And that's sort of really why we came up with the prompts about okay, we're going to start you off. Here's the first line of their story or their poem or whatever it is, as sort of a help for people that haven't worked with photos so much, to sort of see them as, the route into storytelling. Do you want to show us a few, Kirsty, and just pick a few out and talk through a few?
Right, so this is the first one I made. Can you see that? So it's very textured. It's got texture paste on there. And the text says, so this one was I can't remember what the first prompt was, but it was about the sea, wasn't it? It was about a fisherman, I think.
Yes.
And it says, the sea whispered endlessly to him. And we've got this little guy, which I think might have been one of the freebie guys from your, gosh, it's hard to see in this light, isn't it? So there's a little photograph in there. There's some texture and there's salt. So this was the second one, I think. And so I've got the photograph on the outside there, and she's covered in a little bit of fabric to kind of make a veil. And then on the inside it said, oh, I can't actually read it. Languid absinthe afternoons in a green hued drawing room. I wanted to show you a couple of things that had come off of it, because obviously I did the whole month and that was great. And I got to the end of the month and I was a bit like, what am I going to do now? Run out of prompts. Almost emailed you and went, can I have some more prompts, please? I thought it was a bit rude. But yeah, I've sort of taken sort of two strands of the matchboxes. So this is one of my little eroded photos journals, which I started making after the matchboxes. I had already made a couple of these journals. And so this is where the photography side went.
Beautiful.
So this is the third one of these little journals I've made. So it's all altered photographs, because I got really interested in sort of how far you can push a photograph. How far you can push it and it still reads as a photo, because sometimes you can, that's a transfer.
Yeah.
A little bit influenced by your course there, Jane.
Yeah, the textual reference.
So, this is one of my slide book series.
Oh, yes.
So these are made from die cuts. This is a Tim Holtz die.
Yeah.
One of his sets of dies. And I am obsessed with this die. I have made 23 of these little books now.
Oh, wow.
Based on this one slide down, because I'm strange and obsessive. And both a lot of them have altered photos in, but also this is where the words really went, because I wanted to carry on working in that very poetic way. I got really into, when I was doing the matchboxes, kind of getting that sentence just right. So all of these little slide books, a lot of them have altered photos, but all of them have the text. And that came directly from doing the challenge. I wasn't working with text in that way before.
Yeah. So are you likely to be doing a sort of similar series approach to the next one? Or?
I am, but I'm not going to be using matchboxes.
Okay. So we'll have to wait another 9 days to find out.
To find out what I'm going to use.
I have a question. One thing is, I love your Instagram and I love how you are very experimental and how you share all of your discoveries, which sometimes
incredibly generous,
serendipitous like discoveries, and that I really love. But I have a specific question. Is there one art supply that you just can't imagine living without? And I know you have a lot of supplies.
Gesso. I use gesso all the time. If you'd asked me about tools, it would have been my all.
Me too.
Every single day of my life, I use that.
Me too.
I love that. I'll be gutted if that ever breaks.
is there a technique that you particularly enjoyed from the matchboxes? Because you've done everything, any technique you need.
I liked this one.
Oh yeah, with all the
little faces, because it was such a challenge. It was like I had to print these out several times.
Oh yes.
And then getting them all. And yours, I think, does yours have squares or hexagons, and it's like a quilt in the book?
Yeah, and it's interesting because the pressure of actually knowing you've got to have something for the next day, you know, is sort of a double-sided sword as well, isn't it? It can be, you know, quite stressful, but it really sort of pushes you to think, okay, I've got to have something created, you know, in the next sort of 24 hours or whatever. And it does sort of force your brain into all sorts of different corners that you hadn't really explored before.
That's one of the good things actually about doing a challenge, is you just have to produce. You have to get it. It's like you have to get it on the table. It's like doing a meal, isn't it? It's like, it's no good if the spaghetti is 3 hours late. You have to actually get your head down and do it.
There's a lot to be said about accountability when you're doing a challenge and people are posting on the day. And if you stop halfway, I mean, obviously we're not asking everyone to do every single day, but there is something about, yes, I, like you say, just preparing a meal, like I need to feed the people, I'm going to put a meal out. And it's the same, you know, you're taking a bit of the pressure off because you want to be part of this community and people are posting, and so you go and post.
And it's very self-directed, you know. It's like you say, you're not forcing people to do every single day. If somebody just wants to come and do one day that really speaks to them, if they've got one prompt that they're like, oh, I love that one, just do that one, that's fine.
To use the meal analogy, you know, if yours is a 3-course meal, other people might just be able to produce a sandwich, and that's equally exciting for Jack and I to see, because, you know, it's however you respond to the challenge and however experienced people are as artists, it's still amazing to see what it was that prompt triggered in their brain, to see what they produced. So, you know, it's hopefully quite a democratic challenge, because everyone can respond in however simplistic or complex a way they want to.
I always say, because people are like, how do you work every day when you're ill? And I'm like, I allow myself to only do 5 minutes. Like, because what I say is 5 minutes is better than no minutes. And it's like, if you do 5 minutes a day, it sounds like nothing in our terms. And, you know, most days I'll do more than that. But on really ill days, 5 minutes might be all I can manage, and that's okay. It's better than no minutes. And you do have to meet yourself where you are.